Hello.
Hello. Hello, good afternoon. This is Evie.
How Evie? It's
Sorry, I can't hear you.
Sorry.
Now we're unmuted.
Yes. We are starting in a few minutes, just giving a few of the other attendees time to join us. And in the meantime, we were testing a little bit the audio and how it works.
Okay.
But I understand you can hear us now, huh?
Yes, we do.
Good. Katrien, are you muted?
Yeah.
Maybe you can.
Good afternoon, everybody. Am I audible to you?
yes.
Right.
Good afternoon. This is technology from Istanbul. We can hear you.
Great.
Yes.
Great from Istanbul. It's nice.
Well, welcome to this webinar. My name is Frank Berkers. I work for TNO, and I'm leading the work package 4. And today we have scheduled a webinar on skills and capabilities for SmartAgriHubs. The background of this webinar is coming forward from the needs assessment that we executed some months ago, and we discussed the priorities that came out of that analysis, and one of these priorities is the content of this webinar. And I would like to introduce my colleague Govert Gijsbers, who is performing this webinar for you. So please, Govert.
Thank you, Frank. Let's move the machine a little bit so that. Not sure if you all want to see me, but now I need to move myself a bit because I can now I cannot see the. I need to make this a bit smaller because I cannot see the. Need to move this. I need to move myself out of the way a little bit. Can we minimize it somewhere? If what happens if we click on that? Yeah. I'm still. Yeah. That's right. Okay. Okay. So this webinar is about skills and capacities for digital innovation hubs, and especially for SmartAgriHubs. When I talk about skills, just as a sort of as a starter, Skills is basically short for skills, capacities, capabilities, applied knowledge. I know there's a lot of discussion in educational circles about the differences between skills and competences. We will not go into that in this context. So skills is basically sort of a short word for all of these different elements. Let me see when I have how am I not going to the next one? It did move. Now it does. Give you a short overview of the presentation. I think it will last about 30 minutes, and then we have time for discussion and questions. I think you can also, and I'm looking at my colleagues. I think you can also put questions on in the chat box, which I at the moment cannot see because I have a full screen in front of me. But we can look at that later. I'm going to, this is the overview of the presentation. I'm going to say something quickly about the context of this presentation, the background about the SmartAgriHubs and this work package. I'm not sure how quick that has to be. If all of you are sort of more or less familiar with the SmartAgriHubs project, we can do this very quickly. Then I'm going to say something also quickly about digital innovation hubs and networks, because as a general background, I assume that a lot of people will also be aware of that to some extent. About skills and competences as a high priority area for digital innovation hubs. I'm going to talk about different types of skills, and that's sort of the core of the presentation. And I'm going to discuss something that I've called the skills pyramid, with two main types, which is basically skills for hubs and skills for users. I'm going to say something about skills development, the development process and the actors involved, and about funding skills-related activities. So very quickly, I think the SmartAgriHubs project has as its main objective to support and to make a big impact on the digital transformation of the European agri-food sector. I'm going to continue. For those of you not familiar with the project, you can read the slide afterwards, because the slides will be available. But I think most of you will be aware of the AgriHubs project. I have one more slide on the project. It's really, I think it's a fairly big project. I think it has a 20 million euro budget. It has ambitious goals as far as impact is concerned. If you see the top right, one of the aims is to attract at least 30 million in additional funding, and come up with a whole range of new sort of different performance indicators. We now have 108 partners, so that tells you something about the size of the project. We now have, at the start of the project, 140 digital innovation hubs involved, and the aim is to reach a total of 400. We already have a whole series of 28 what we call flagship innovation experiments. That also needs to be increased with quite a big range of new digital solutions, etc. And I think an important one is that a lot of the funding, I think more than half of the funding of the project will actually pass through the project, will cascade through the project, and will go to digital innovation hubs and other users, and it will be distributed through open calls. Then something on, I'm not sure why this doesn't work. Oh, well, oops, now it's going to, work package 4, where this comes from, which is indeed called capacity building and monitoring, supporting agricultural digital innovation hubs to develop and deliver a portfolio of relevant and value-adding innovation services to end users. And through this capacity building, also to support the development of a pan-European network, and to develop what the Commission calls European value added. And some of the key activities involve a needs assessment, a maturity assessment, capacity building activities, and an observatory. But that goes too far to get into details. Now, about digital innovation hubs, what they are. Basically, we see them as public-private partnerships, and a lot of people will be familiar with the figure at the top right of the screen. A public-private partnership that involves a number of different actors from the public and from the private sector, involving competence centers, that basically the knowledge centers, the R&D base of the hub. Companies can be involved, or industry associations, groups of companies, especially when we talk about SMEs. There will be government organizations involved, educational institutions, and it's of course it's always difficult to make such a partnership work. In practice, a digital innovation hub will consist of sort of a core group, sort of an inner circle, a core consortium with a broad sort of outreach network of partners that are involved in a more loose manner, also for outreach. Importantly, originally set up and conceived as sort of a one-stop shop in the region, so that every region has for the end users, the farmers and the SMEs in the case of SmartAgriHubs, will have a one window, a one-stop shop window to address questions to and ask for solutions and support. And finally, an important point is that we've over the years we've sort of come up with the idea that it's best to define hubs actually by what they do, and what they do is basically the services that they provide, and those services come in three different types basically. Ecosystem services that have to do with the community, building first of all the core network and the bigger network, the bigger community, the whole ecosystem. It has to do with lobbying and what some people call advocacy. Is promoting the interest of the digital innovation hubs. And then next to that, there are technology services, which can include different types of sort of strategic and applied research, but also testing and validation of solutions, providing research and technology infrastructures also for testing and for R&D. And then there is finally the third domain is what we call business services, and they include support to new startups and accelerators, incubators, access to finance, and also skills and education as a service. And we come back to that in the course of this presentation. Now, on the picture here that you see at the top right was sort of how it was defined originally in, say, 2015, 2016. But since then, a lot has actually happened. And the concept of digital innovation hubs, which basically started in industry, in the manufacturing sector, supported by DG Connect, has become sort of quite broadly adopted and has been picked up not only in manufacturing but also now in agriculture, of course, SmartAgriHubs, but also in health and the chemical sector. So we have quite a big impact in the sense of the number of digital innovation hubs, but also that we, in some regions we see more than then one digital innovation hub addressing different sectors. So what we've seen actually since 2015-16 is that the whole network and the whole it's not only digital innovation hubs, but we see the development of networks of digital innovation hubs. So the different sort of types of entities, we have these competence centers, we have individual digital innovation hubs, but we also in regions we have networks of hubs, and also across borders we have international hubs. For example, on there are European digital innovation hub networks on robotics, etc. And in between that, we also in some countries we have national platforms that perform similar sort of roles, and where some of the the original idea that a single innovation hubs can provide all the services to all the customers is no longer the case. But some of the more specialized services, say for example on intellectual property, they can better be provided by regional networks or by a national platform. So that really depends very much on the type of sector, the type of country, how advanced it is, how it's all organized. So so basically, the summary of this is that in the last 5 years we've seen quite a complex system emerge of individual hubs and networks of digital innovation hubs. Okay, that's all introduction. Now we're getting to the skills. Why are skills so important for digital innovation hubs, for agri-hubs, and for farmers, of course? And I think there's a couple of reasons, and they all have to do with a number of sort of key transitions that are needed in the agri-food sector. First of all, we have the key one. I think the most important one is the digital transformation, smart farming. The digital transformation, I think, started probably in manufacturing, but it's become very important in agriculture, with a whole range of technologies now available in the agricultural sector. In addition, there's I think what we call the sustainability transition. We need to work towards high productivity systems that are also sustainable, if only to feed a growing world and protect the environment at the same time in a situation that is changing because of climate change issues, etc. We also, as a third transition, we're faced with a demographic transition, and especially in many rural areas, aging is even more of an issue than it is in urban areas, with many farmers finding it difficult to find successors, and scarcity of personnel. So technology can be an answer to that demographic transition as well. And skills and new competences are, we feel, essential to deal with all of these challenges, and I think we need to do it in an integrated manner. And now I think we come to what I think is the core slide of this presentation. I think when we talk about skills for hubs, then we need to really think about a number of different types of skills. And first, when we basically sort of, you can see there, the bottom of this pyramid is basically skills that are needed for digital innovation hubs to become efficient and effective players, and at the top we see that the skills that are needed for the users. So first we have skills. You need some skills to set up, to establish a digital innovation hub. There are skills that you need to run a digital innovation hub. They're linked, but they're somewhat different. Separately, the bar on the left, important also specifically in this work package, self-assessment skills. I'm going to show a couple of slides on that. And then we have, and going back to the slide I showed a little bit earlier, skills are also a service provided by digital innovation hubs to users. And that's a different type of skills, so that we also need to take into consideration. And then I've added a category of skills for coaches and intermediaries, and I'll say something about that more. But we need those to get the multiplier. And finally, there's a need to, of course, in the end, this whole pyramid should aim to is to get the necessary new digital and other skills to the end users, to the farmers and the agro-industrial SMEs that are the target groups of our project. Okay, I'm going to briefly discuss them one by one. There's what you need for the skills that you need for to establish your digital innovation hubs. You want to start from a core group. A group of actors and from one coordinator who's actually taking the lead. And there's a number of key topics that you need to address when you want to set up a hub. It's about mission and vision. It's basically, why is the hub there, and what are the its fundamental purposes, etc. You need to make decisions about the governance structure, the legal person, etc. It could be a foundation, it could be a not-for-profit, it could also be still initially be sort of a loose consortium. Different options with different pros and cons. Those need to be addressed. Important. You need to do an ecosystem assessment. Basically, it's you need to make a map of your network of partners and their roles. Who does what in the network, and who pays what, etc. All these things. You need to think about the business models. It's essentially the question: how will the digital innovation hub make money, or how will it recover its costs? And specifically also, how will the hub attract funding and finance from different sources, both public and private? What activities do we want to fund by public funding? What activities can be funded from private sources? And then finally, in a sort of a business plan, you want to bring all of these together in a consistent manner. So that's very briefly. We have from other projects. We have webinars that go into each of these bullet points in much more detail. But that's enough for now, I think. Now let's assume that you have you've set up your hub, and to run it, what do you need? You need different types of skills. Managing the consortium, and as in all public-private partnerships, there will be tensions. Those need to be managed. You have a portfolio of projects that needs to be managed. You need to develop use cases to show what you're going to do. This network and alliance management, connecting to other digital innovation hubs and new partners, is important. You need to establish links with and speak the language of your end users, especially in our case of farmers. You need to be able to manage resources, the human resources, financial management, physical and facilities management, technology management, and you need to know something about budgeting, annual planning, etc. You also need to promote the hub, brand development, establishing trust. What's the added value of the hub? You need to be able to do matchmaking and brokerage to bring parties together, and you need to get this constant feedback and link with all the partners in your ecosystem. And then you need also to have this strategy development, and you need to, as a hub, you need to have flexible and adaptable strategies so that you can continuously renew yourself. And then I think finally you need an important function has to do with monitoring and evaluation, and that has then to do with this other set of skills that I mentioned. It's basically these self-assessment skills, which you can see as a special category, and do periodic diagnosis, where do we stand, strategy development, where do we go, periodic monitoring and evaluation, and use some of the tools that we've developed in this project and that are also available from other sources. But on the digital maturity assessment, for example, developed here, I think you can see that we've, and the materials I think are available for the to use the digital maturity assessment. We're distinguishing a number of generic elements, but also we assess you can assess the maturity. It's basically in a self-assessment mode. You can assess the digital innovation hub's maturity for the specific services, and without going into details, we for each of the different services, we've then distinguished a number of maturity levels on which you can either score yourself or you can ask external evaluators or partners to assess yourself. And then I've got one example here. I'm using the skills as a service as an example, and you can see it goes from level 1, where there's no specific expertise, through some basic training, structured training, fully fledged training programs, and the good infrastructure to a digital innovation hub that is really a center of excellence in the provision of skills and education. So if you're interested in that, there's material available on the on maturity assessment, so that you can use. Let me see. The third line here, I think it's the third one. If I'm the fourth one in the skills, is that we also have the skills and capacity building, that skills and capacities that are provided by the Digital Innovation Hub as a service. We've looked at these services earlier, and in you saw skills under business services. More recently, we've you can see in brown here, we're seeing skills as sort of a cross-cutting service that's basically can be linked to all of these other services, in getting the skills across to different types of users. Some examples on the services here. The association of I think the Alliance of Internet of Things Innovations, I think it's called, the IoT, has done a survey on 53 digital innovation hubs in the agri-food sector. They've looked at using the categories that from the previous slide. They've looked at the hubs that are demanding the service and that are offering the service. And you can see at the top there's things like project development is seen as important, and then as a second most important, skills and education is mentioned as a service, and then we go access to finance. So really, skills and education is featuring as an important service. Another example, and quite different actually, from a survey we did in the Netherlands, and it involved a number of agri-equipment manufacturers. This is what we got back from the companies. It's about, the core is about sort of ICT skills, things like machine programming, advanced CAD/CAM applications, but also things like understanding complex production processes, so requiring a different type of worker also. Quality management, zero defects and first time right, proactiveness and also entrepreneurship. So it's important that it's not only the hard ICT and tech skills, but also things like entrepreneurship, knowledge sharing in teams, social innovation, leadership and management, safety management, flexible robots, etc. So quite a mix of skills that were mentioned by companies. Let me move on to the other type of type of skill. Maybe we should call it a target group: coaches and intermediaries. And why do we need coaches and intermediaries? I think they're an essential link in the chain. We need, I said in the beginning, we need multipliers, and with a number, say even with 400 digital innovation hubs, it's impossible to reach many end users because there's millions of them across Europe. And if you look at, for example, if you look at the adoption curve that you see at the bottom, we really aim for the sort of the dark part there, which is sort of the bulk of the users, not just the early adopters, but the early majority and the late majority as well. So we need to reach a significant number of farmers. We need to have intermediaries and coaches, which is a role that in the agricultural sector is traditionally performed by extension agencies, and that I think is a model well known in the agriculture sector. So we need a large cadre or a group of intermediaries, trainers, to provide these services to the end users, and they play, I think, a very important role, and our project and other projects need to think of that. And they have different roles. They perform this link between hubs and end users. They can support farmers and companies in their digital transformation process. They can help identify intervention areas. They can help find specialist expertise where it's needed from universities, from other hubs, from competence centers. And I think important, they should act as honest brokers, intermediaries that help to avoid locking into specific sort of company related hard and software, which is a problem that's occurring very often. Finally, the new skills for the end users. First, when we look at companies, SMEs, here's an example that I took from Belgium, where there's also a number of agri-food SMEs involved. The way that the May Different program in Belgium does it, they've identified 7 transformation domains, and the Dutch Smart Industry program has done something similar, and it involves a number of sort of hard digital technologies at the core, world-class manufacturing technologies, network factories, digital end-to-end engineering, but also things like eco-production and human-centered production, which has to do could do with human-robot interaction, etc. So a broad approach to the digital transformation, which also has implications for the types of skills that are needed. Then the perhaps for us the most important group of end users, farmers. Took this from the EU skills agenda, and it gives you some examples of the skills needed and the benefits: improved decision making, flexibility, and avoiding repetitive tasks. A whole range of farmer needs. And from another survey, I got an example of the knowledge needs of interviewed young farmers. This is, I forgot the name of the project, but it got some familiar participants in there. Technological knowledge, farm strategy, subsidies and grants, and financial skills are sort of the top 4 of the knowledge needs. and where do the young farmers get their needs from? Surprisingly, I think other farmers still the most important source of information. Surprisingly, what is missing from this list is the internet. Couldn't find it here. Young farmers, like young and old people everywhere, would get most of their information from the internet. So this is missing there, which I found very surprising. But other farmers and farmer associations are still very important sources of information, like consultants and people from the extension services. But yeah, found this very interesting. A couple of points to wrap up. How do you go about the skills development process? It's not an easy task because you have to link up technology, business, and education partners. We think it's important. We've seen some interesting examples from the manufacturing sector that you want to involve educational institutions from the beginning in your digital innovation hub. That's very important. Can be both at the sort of the vocational training level and at the sort of the applied universities of technology, or whatever they're called in your country. We've seen, for example, in the Brainports Industries campus in Europe, where they've actually trying to pull in the educational institutions into the digital innovation hub from the beginning, so that people from the youngest age are getting involved in the high-tech industry, and because the industry is really short of skilled people, and they try to capture the people as quickly as possible. Important also to invest in a network of coaches. I think that is the intermediaries and the coaches as the multiplier that we need, especially for older farmers. I think it's important to look at these sort of. I haven't said much about anything about that in this presentation, but about lifelong learning approaches to upgrade digital skills. And finally, what we've seen is that a regional approach to skills development is really, really important, because at the regional level, the actors know each other, and it's also important to provide these services at the regional level, especially in the agricultural sector, where the differences between regions can be quite significant. So that regional approach, I think, is a very important issue. Funding. Finally, last slide. I think this is not quite the last one. Mixed funding. Different. You need to obtain different sources of funding, and they're also available at regional, national level, European level. I won't say anything about regional and national, because it's different from region to region and from country to country. So just a few words on the European funding possibilities, and that's quite a few of them, both in the structural funds, the regional development and the social development funds, the agricultural funding, the FRD. The upcoming Digital Europe program has funding for hubs and for digital transformation, and there may be others I think that I'm not aware of, and that maybe you are aware of. But I think these are there's quite, and developing a strategy to target these funding will be very profitable, I think. Finally, at the end, there's two more. Okay. To sum up, there's a need for strong hubs to play this role. We need intermediaries. I think in this digital transformation involves both hard technological and soft skills, and we need a wide range and a mix of methods. What's referred to often as blended learning, but also webinars, individual coaching, demonstrations, group work, and individual coaching. They're all important. And finally, I think that Frank asked me to formulate a challenge for you, and you've sort of heard all this and maybe thought a little bit about this. I think a challenge that we would have for you is to think about, for your digital innovation hub, think about an overall skills development strategy that would take these different levels into account. What types of skills would be the priority for you at what level? Always keeping in mind that the ultimate objective is of course to support the end users, the farmers and the SMEs, and that you both sort of take an approach from the what you have in your digital innovation hub, but also on the other interactively back from what the farmers need. Hence these two arrows. Maybe in a couple of months we can have another discussion about how you have picked up this challenge. I think this is what I had to say. Yes, questions and comments we have time for now, and some more contact information if you want to reach us.
Yes. Thank you very much, Govert. I think it was quite an interesting webinar on the skills for the digital innovation hubs. It's also quite a generic introduction on how we view the digital innovation hubs, and with the pyramid, you emphasize really that building up the network and the outreach into the region of the digital innovation hub is really important, yet challenging, I assume. In the chat box, we have received some questions. I'll just go through them in order. The first one is by Nikolai Fogg-Hansen. So you refer to digital innovation hubs as new companies. Probably DIHs will primarily arise around existing companies expanding their business with digital activities.
Not really companies, but they're more like called public-private partnerships. They're a network of organizations around a core organization, and the core organization can be an existing company. But we've seen that, I think, in practice, many digital innovation hubs have actually they're originating either from government departments or from technology institutes, and especially in the manufacturing sector, where there's a lot of this digitization discussion is taking place.
Okay. Yes. So you see different origins, basically.
Yeah, different origins. Yeah.
Dolores Ordóñez asks if the slides can be made available. I think we can share them via the SmartAgriHubs portal. Right? Martin Hirt from Österreich asks, how many of these many services should at least be offered in order to be called a digital innovation hub?
That's an interesting one. I think that the total number of these services is about 16 or something. I think perhaps not all of these can be offered at the same time when you're building up the digital innovation hub. But I think it's important that from the three different main categories, the ecosystem services and the tech services and the business services, that there's a few key ones that should be adopted. For example, in the ecosystem services, an assessment of your network and the partners and who does what. I think that is essential. I think on the technology services, I think there's one that's called strategic R&D that will not happen everywhere, but offering testing and validation, that really depends, I think, on the type of project, on the capabilities in the region, what's available. And I think for the business services, I think you will need to have some idea on your business model, and basically how you're going to generate income, how you're going to recover your costs. That is also essential to develop a hub that will be sort of sustainable in the long run.
Yeah.
So I think in each of these categories there are a few that are depending on your capacities that you have to invest, and some that can sort of come later.
Yeah, and I think it's important to stress in SmartAgriHubs we have an inclusive philosophy, meaning that you can register as a hub without further strict qualification in terms of the number of services. Yet we do expect that digital innovation hubs will enter into this maturity self-assessment, and that you will continue to develop yourself along these services.
Yeah.
So that's the minimum expectations that we have. So I'd like to emphasize that. I'd like also to take the opportunity to mention that we are currently implementing the maturity assessment model in Yes. That we're currently implementing this maturity assessment model in the portal, and we expect to launch that in March when we have the General Assembly again. So that's coming, and that will help you to create a good profile of yourself and focus the further developments. The next question by Inkuzina is, our coaches should take part in each digital innovation hub. I interpreted this question, do each digital innovation hub need coaches, or are they paid by the digital innovation hubs? So how do you look at that, Govert?
I think it depends a bit. I think when you are just starting, that will perhaps be a big challenge. But I think as the digital innovation hub grows and becomes more mature, then I think it is very important that you broaden the network, and that you beyond the core partners in the digital innovation hub, that you build this sort of ring of coaches and intermediaries around your around your digital innovation hub, that can actually act as this multiplier. I think the whole point is that how do you should they take part of each? Should they be part of each digital innovation hub? I think it depends. If they could be sort of independent, or they could be they could be support, or they could be consultants to the digital innovation hubs. I think it really depends on what would work in your country, and they could be linked to extension agencies or to educational institutions. I think I think you have to be flexible there. The point is that you need a broader group to create impact and to multiply the message.
Yeah. So that is indeed a challenge. So getting the digital innovation hub in itself sustainably is already a challenge, and you also want coaches to spread the word and provide these skills to provide you in the scaling. So that's
it's a double challenge. Yeah, certainly. Yeah.
So we'll have to dig into that, how to support you doing that. Adina Christea asked whether a digital innovation hubs could be an NGO.
I think so. There are different sort of governance models, and we will in the future perhaps in February have a webinar on governance issues. We're looking into that. It can be set up as a foundation, or as an NGO, or as a not-for-profit company. In some countries they have this. For example, in Belgium they have this model of company without what's it called, without property objectives or something. So there are a number of different sort of possibilities, but it can certainly be an NGO. Yes, yeah.
Okay. And the last question currently available is from Bugha Sargun. Is there a capital commitment? Should we establish an SPV? Can this be in the form of a joint venture?
What is an SPV?
I don't know.
Well, it can be in the form of a joint venture. That's for sure, because it's I think a joint venture is again, I think, some form of public-private partnership. So special purpose vehicle. Okay, yeah. I think all of these options are sort of possible in principle. I think whatever works in your country, because in relation to the rules and regulations and the law that govern foundations, not-for-profit companies, PPPs, special purpose vehicles, etc. I think all of these are possible in principle, and it depends on the on where you come from. If yours is your digital innovation hub is basically started as an initiative by a university, which we've seen in a number of countries, then it could sort of stay under the wings of the university until it sort of matures a bit, and it could be spun out as maybe as a startup or as a but I think very much depending on also on the capabilities that you have for administration and how you want it could be also to have the form of a sort of a fairly open, loose consortium with just governed by a consortium agreement. That's what we also see as a start. But then, if you become more ambitious, I think then you'll want to go to something that is more tightly integrated than an open consortium. But that's really, I think, that's really for next time, because that's really, we're now discussing governance issues rather than skills issues.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
Yes,
but no problem. That's
I think it's also good to mention again here, we as SmartAgriHubs, we currently have a inclusive philosophy with respect to all kinds of organizations. However, I think the European Commission, with respect to the catalog, has a different perspective. Could you comment on that, Christina?
Very briefly. For inclusion in the catalog, there are currently 4 criteria, and you can find them on the GRC website. So if you just type GRC Digital Innovation Hubs catalog, you can see them, and they include criteria such as non-for-profit organization, having established some services with evidence of these services, such as case studies, and actually a presence. But you can find really the formal requirements at the GRC catalog, and that gives you access to the catalog as either established or hub in development. Next to that, I don't want to enter really into that discussion, but of course you have currently the policy discussions about the Digital Europe program and the European Digital Innovation Hubs, but that's still under development. It depends per country. So I think that it's a question which requires a separate topic. It's a separate topic, and so should not be addressed here.
Just to be explicit, that there are differences depending on say the community that we're currently discussing. Good. If you have any more questions, feel free to ask them. You can also use the microphone. I do have a question to our audience. By looking at the names, I kind of see that there's a lot of regional cluster representatives as well as digital innovation hubs. So I'd like to direct the next question specifically to the digital innovation hubs in the audience. And that's quite an open question. So what did you take away? What were your takeaways from this webinar? Please come forward.
I think everybody has their microphone on mute.
Most of the people have. Yes. Then I'm going to ask a similar question to the representatives of the regional clusters. How are you, what were your takeaways, and how are you, or how can we help you to get this content to the digital innovation hubs in your region?
My name is Evie, Regional Cluster UK and Ireland, and I would like to ask a question, Govert and Frank. In SmartAgriHubs, we are struggling a bit between the concept of competence center and digital innovation hub, and sometimes we think that it's more or less the same. Now I see from your presentation, I think it was the second slide, when you presented the evolution of competence centers towards digital innovation hubs. Maybe that one?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it seems that we start from a center with competencies and we are driving forward to a platform or a service, a platform offering all these services, or an entity offering all these services. Is it so, or do I mix the concepts again?
Evie, thank you for the question. I think the question in itself is clear. But I'd like to ask you a question first. Can you explain, say, in what situation you are experiencing this this problem?
Well, it's not a problem, actually. We are co-leading the cluster in UK and Ireland, and in building the ecosystem and expanding the network, we are almost every day communicating with new existing or new initiatives and platforms and services. So it was clear from the beginning that, for example, a research institute or a university lab is a competence center, but sometimes a digital innovation hub is part of it, or it's both competence center and digital innovation hub. So I think that other clusters as well are having this, maybe not, it's not a problem, might be an issue.
Yeah. Well, in fact, if you look at the the second picture of the left in the digital innovation hub, I think what you see that in green, you see it's very small, but you see the coordinator there, and you see in blue the competence center. And I think what you're sort of referring to is that the competence center is also the coordinator. And that often happens. I think there are different roles, but they're often played by the same organization or department or unit. But I think the crucial difference between the competence center and or / coordinator is that the digital innovation hub must involve a number of other partners. Otherwise, it's not a digital innovation hub. If it's only your university department that calls itself a digital innovation hub, I think then there's something missing.
Yeah, so I think it's more clear now. So the competence center has the role of, it's a matter of definition of roles, first of all.
Yes.
And competence center has the role of coordinator, maybe.
Yeah, but it can also be different. It can also be a different outfit, a different unit that has the role, plays the role of coordinator.
Yeah. Okay. And the digital innovation hub, of course, coming from the manufacturing sector, as I know, should involve many other partners to offer all these services. Or
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
part of
Yeah.
them. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
Yeah.
In the chat box, I see that Lisa Pezonen has a takeaway message that says, yeah, right. Yeah, the takeaway message is, okay, train or collect a group of multipliers. And I think that that's indeed the important message of the pyramid, the challenge and indeed the message. So thank you for that summary. Inga writes, what could be the legal status between stakeholders into a digital innovation hub? I think this is also much related to governance.
It's again this governance question, and I think there's basically two answers. That one, it sort of varies by country and region and what the legal and regular, and the other is that it varies by the evolution stage of the digital innovation hub. So as I said in the beginning, it could start off as a consortium with a very simple consortium agreement, and when it grows and builds, it could become either a company or it could be formalized. So I think there's no really specific answer to that, but I think you need to look forward for the solution that fits your specific situation best, taking into account also your capabilities. I think in a small remote region in one of the new member states, it maybe you want to start smaller, and in some of the sort of the highly sort of industrialized agricultural regions, it could be different. I think it's not a very satisfactory answer, but it depends.
Yeah. Okay.
Can you go up?
Yeah. Okay, there is some more chats around the distinction between digital innovation hub and competence center. So it's about networking and providing
due to provided services. Fully agree. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. I think this should be the last question with an eye on the time.
Oh yeah.
Do competence centers play a role in certifying services handled or promoted by a digital innovation hub?
Certifying services. I'm not sure, but this is whether we actually want to go as far as sort of fully certifying services. I think there should be some form of quality control. I mean, that's why competence centers are there. That they have specific knowledge and expertise and competences, and they should provide that this knowledge and but I don't think there's actually a need to sort of officially certify that. I also mentioned the role of honest broker. I think that's also important that competence centers provide honest advice and make sure that you don't get a technological lock-in to specific suppliers of software or hardware, but that I think is also important. So those are important, I think. But certification, I think, would be too much as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, and on top of that, I would think, say the set of services that a competence center can provide is, in that sense, a subset at least of what the digital innovation hub provides.
Yeah.
So there are at least a number of services that the competence centers could not even certify. But I do agree that there is, of course, a stake of the competence center in the quality of the services delivered.
Yeah.
Right, because the purpose of the digital innovation hub is to flourish the ecosystem in which the competence center is a huge stakeholder, I would say.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure if we're completely covering that question. I'd like to close the session. It's 4 o'clock. I thank you all for participating in this webinar, and also for the questions. We will have some more webinars in the next year, following up on the priorities from the needs assessment. The webinar will be available as a download or view from the portal, as well as the slides. So I'd like again to thank you, Govert, and yeah, thank you for doing this webinar and sharing your knowledge. And to the audience, Merry Christmas, and we meet again next year. Thank you.
Okay, and if you have any other questions, send them by mail. Huh? There's an email address at the end of the presentation. So.
Okay, thank you for sharing the presentation.
No
All right, thank you. Bye-bye.
Yep. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Happy Christmas.
Bye-bye, same to you.
Bye-bye. Yani ben anlamadım. Hakikaten Zübeyir'in elinde gördüm. Sonra